Hello everyone, I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our next matchup for UFC Noche. For this one, we have Kelvin Gastalum versus Dustin Stoltzfus. Gastalum is 19-10 overall, 2-3 in his last 5 fights, while Stoltzfus is 16-7 overall as a professional. Same as Gastelum, 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Actually, if you look at their last 5 fights on Tapology, they are exactly the same. Their most recent fight is a loss. Their last fight is a loss. And in between, 2 wins and 1 loss down the middle. All in all, it's kind of a battle of middleweights who are trying to kind of find their placehold in the division. Gastelum, what do I say? He's been with the UFC since he was 21, so he's been in this company for about 12 years, and he's fought the who's who. Now, originally started off as a welterweight, and it seemed that was the right weight class for him, but there were a lot of discipline issues with Gastelum. He just kept missing weight, and eventually he had no choice but to move up to middleweight. But even then, he had a lot of success. He didn't win all the fights, but he was at the time on a pretty good win streak, beating the likes of Jacare Souza, Michael Bisping, Vitor Belfort, or Nate Marquardt. I don't know, that was at welterweight. But you get my point. He had some pretty good wins at middleweight, and even though he was always the shorter fighter at 5'9", with a 71.5-inch reach, he had really good boxing abilities, being able to pressure the bigger guys he was going up against the cage. Had some good wrestling, mostly high school / college level wrestling. And overall, his granite chin. He has taken an enormous amount of punishment and has never been knocked out. Thinking like he's lost to Jared Cannonier, Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker, Joe Pyfer as of recent. None of these guys were able to knock him out. Those were some of the hardest hitting middleweights, past and present. Now, looking at his last 5 fights, he lost to Jared Cannonier about 4 years ago, then took about 2 years off due to injuries and other stuff, beat Chris Curtis at UFC 287, then he tried going back to welterweight where Sean Brady just bodied him, then he fought D-Rod in his last win, which was last June, which was kind of bullshit because that was supposed to be at 170, but literally they had to move it up the weight class above because Gastelum just could not make weight. And then most recently at UFC 316, he lost to Joe Pyfer, as I mentioned. Now, looking at Dustin Stoltzfus, he's about the same in Gastelum in terms of skill level right now, but it's ironic. They're both the same age at 33. It's just Gastelum's an old 33. But looking at Stoltzfus in the last 5 fights, he got blitzed by Abus Magomedov in 19 seconds, then got, I believe, his first UFC win against Poliari Soriano via submission, which has aged pretty well since Soriano's moved down to welterweight. Then he lost to Bruno Ferreira by knockout. Then in his most recent win last November, he knocked out Marc-Andre Barrios, which, be it as it may, it's very impressive how badly he chinned Barrios, since most fighters aren't able to do that. And then most recently this May, he lost to Nurisian Ruziboyev in a fight where he showed a lot of heart and even won the first round. And all in all, I thought he would put up a pretty gamed effort, even with a broken nose. Look at the fight. They're very similar in certain aspects where they're both good boxers, pretty stout and strong middleweights with good wrestling, and have some submissions to their arsenal. I think Stoltzfus might be a better overall grappler, and I think they're pretty even in their wrestling. Gastelum for sure is the better striker for me. At least he's still pretty fast with his hand speed and his darting in and out movement in the southpaw stance. But I gotta be honest, lately Kelvin Gastelum has just been leaving so much for the desire. I don't think he really wants to be in there, if I'm being honest. Now, he's still fighting, he's still trying to get wins, and he's still, at times, putting in gamed efforts like he did against Joe Pyfer where he won the 3rd round. But then there are moments in fights where he just looks so out of it. He doesn't look like he wants to be there. He looks like he's kind of just given up. There's no other way to say it. Like, you look at Sean Brady fight, like, after the first round and midway through the second, it's just like, he's like, oh, god damn, I got taken down again. And, like, what am I supposed to do? While Stoltzfus, don't get me wrong, Gastelum's clearly being better guys. But I did feel like Stoltzfus has put in much more of an effort to win as of late. Now, you look at his last few fights, right? Rizin Boyev, Bruno Ferreira, Abus Magomedov. Two of those three are at least top 20 middleweights who for sure are going to fight for the rankings at one point. I think Bruno Ferreira was even scheduled for a ranked shot against Marvin Vettori, and Abus Magomedov is ranked. Literally, he's only fought to really lost to like the top 20 guys, and like you look at some of the other losses he's had at the time, which include like Rodolfo Vieira, or like names I can think of mine. All in all, Stoltzfus is not a bad fighter. He's clearly a good middle of the road. He's kind of a journeyman, but all in all, I think his skills are still pretty good. If this was Gastelum a few years ago, say 2018, I would for sure pick him to win, and I would agree with these odds that are minus 250 for Gastelum, plus 200 for Stoltzfus. But I just don't like where Gastelum's head has been at. He just seems undisciplined. He doesn't seem like he really is. The fight is in him anymore. Now, granted, that's also part, the war he had with Israel Adesanya. There's a saying, fights like that take a little bit out of you, win or lose. Especially if you lose. And I think a little bit took it out of Gastelum. And you look at, like, the last few fights, besides the two wins I mentioned, his last win was in 2018 against Jacare Souza and Ian Heinisch. Both of those are since retired and no longer in the UFC. Call me crazy, but I think Stoltzfus can get the win here. Not only is like he's going to be the bigger man at 6 foot with a 75-inch reach, he's physically stout, pretty strong for this division at times. You've seen it, where he's actually like lifted Joe Pyfer up in the Contender Series. Like all in all, Stoltzfus is a pretty strong middleweight. And Gastelum really has not been using his wrestling as of late. Like, think about it. When was the last time you really see Gastelum offensively wrestle? Besides the D-Rod fight. But in that fight, he had a weight advantage over him. So, of course, he was going to use that. But I'm talking about as of late. He not really pivoted to the wrestling he once had. It's mostly just been his boxing. And while I definitely still think he's a better striker than Stoltzfus, I just can't see him winning off of that alone. I think Stoltzfus can wrestle him. I think he can out-muscle Gastelum. And I think he can get the win here. Now, I don't think he's going to chin Gastelum, not at all. If, Pyfer can't knock him out, if Jared Cannonier, none of these people can knock him out. They can drop him, but they can't knock him out. I don't see Stoltzfus either. I think if Stoltzfus were to get a finish here, I think he can get a submission. He has some good submissions. You saw with Soriano, and of his 16 wins, 6 are by submission. He's proven to have good grappling. And if there's one way to finish Gastelum, we've seen it, it's via submission, whether it was like Chris Weidman or Sean Brady, and a few others that are escaping me off the top of my head. I can see it. Or he can just ride out the rounds and win minutes via his wrestling, as he's going to be, I think, the better wrestler, better grappler for sure, and overall just the bigger fighter. I really think I like Dustin Stoltzfus' chances in this fight. I just have not been impressed with Gastelum as of late. I think he just doesn't have that same fire in him. While I think Stoltzfus still has somewhat of a competitive fire in him to try and win. So I'm picking Dustin Stoltzfus here. Whether decision or sub is a little tricky, but I like the submission prop. I think that's probably a good prop bet to bet on, or just go for straight submission at the end of the day. But still, I'm picking Dustin Stoltzfus in this fight, and hey, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, egg on my face, whatever. I like him in this fight, and I like him as the 2-1 underdog. But with that being said, that had been my prediction for this fight. If you like the video, comment, and subscribe. I'd like to hear what you think of the fight. I'd like to hear if you think I'm right, or you think I'm crazy. Either way, I'd like to hear your opinion. But with that being said, next up we'll have our featured fight, Jared Gordon versus Rafa Garcia. But with that being said, I've been Bo from Brutal Commentary. I thank you all for listening. Take care.